Unleash your power with the Nephilim Death Squad. Collection at toplobster.com. Bold designs. Premium quality. From iconic logo tees to signature hoodies and caps. Wear your allegiance with pride. Whether you're rocking the classic NDS logo or the traditional look, these limited edition pieces are for those who stand apart. Shop now at toplobster.com. Toplobster.com. Wear the legend.
What's up, guys?
We are being hypnotized by people like this. Newsreaders, politicians, teachers, lecturers.
We are in a country and in a world that is being run by unbelievably sick people. The chasm between what we're told is going on and what is really going on is absolutely incredible.
Oh yeah, dude. There's some Nephilim shit.
It's like we all know what's going down, but no one's saying shit what happened to the home of the brave. These motherfuckers, they controlling us now, and no one's talking about how they made us modern day slaves. And everybody's just walking around, heading the clouds, and wanna wake up to a dead in the grave. But then it's too late, we need to be ready to raise up. Welcome to the end of days. Everybody is slaves, only some are aware that the government...
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Nephilim Death Squad. I am David Lee Corbo, a.k.a. The Raven. That is Top Lobster, the father of disinformation, and we are joined once again by our homie over at the Awaken Podcast, Brad. Brad, if you could, for the audience who might not be familiar with you, let them know what it is you focus on and where they can find you.
What's up, guys? How y'all doing? Thank y'all for having me on again. I appreciate this. My name is Brad. I'm the host of the Awaken Podcast, where I try to find answers to our reality. I'm into spirituality and religion and paranormal and hidden history and all that stuff. But again, I take a different angle on it. I'm trying to figure out, like, I started realizing a while back that they're lying to us about a lot of shit. Obviously, that's why we're all into this space. But once I started realizing this, I started seeing that, like, they were hiding a lot of little pieces of information, such as like where plasma is coming from. I mean, what the fourth state of matter is, that kind of stuff. So I started taking a different approach to, like, okay, like, instead of talking about Dogman and all this stuff, I want to know where the fuck these things are coming from. Who are they? What are they? Where are they coming from? And so, like, my whole show is kind of predicated on, like, talking to people to help add pieces to that puzzle, like guys like Paul Stobbs and Joel Thomas and those kind of guys that kind of add their 2 cents on how they see, like, this world we live in. Or I try to go hard at the questions of, like, are we in a prism? Are we in a flat Earth? Are we in a toroidal shaped donut Earth? I try to go at all these different angles to try to find, again, the real answers to who we are and what we are, and what our true powers are.
Wait, before we go on, I got to know then, where's your money on? Are we flat Earth? Are we donut Earth? Are we pear-shaped Earth? Are we spherical Earth?
You're going to piss everybody off. Go ahead.
Yeah. Look, first of all, I don't know shit about anything. I don't know shit about fuck, right? So it's like, I'm thinking it's more like a donut Earth for sure. And, but I don't know. I haven't been to fucking space. I can't see it for myself. I don't know. So
that's because it's not real. It's definitively not real.
But I do like space is not real.
I like donut Earth. I feel like that's a cozier Earth. Isn't it a cozier Earth than, like, a flat Earth? A flat Earth feels like you're naked and you're out and you're exposed. A sphere Earth is all right. I've kind of gotten used to that one, but I feel like there's a coziness to, like, a donut Earth. It's like a big, like, Earth hug. It feels like an enclosed system. It feels safer. I like that one.
Donut Earth. I don't know how I feel about that. That's, like, very futuristic. You're like, what about the people living on the inside here? Like, what are they? I don't know. This is all too much for me right now.
Did you ever play the first Halo? Remember the first Halo where you're on a donut Earth in the first Halo, in the classic one for the Xbox? And so I played that level and I grew to appreciate it. So I'm cool with the donut Earth. You're touching on a lot of interesting stuff, and I think it's a great time to be into these topics, especially with all the UAP disclosure crap that's happening. But this concept that you're tossing around, this fourth state of matter, being plasma, I think it is important to the entire story. We were talking yesterday and previously have on episode 15 of Nephilim Death Squad to a guy named Colin who had his own abduction experiences, if that's what you want to call them. A little bit more profound, I would say. But one of the entities that he got in contact with was like this blue guy. And he didn't necessarily explain it on our show, but he then went on to talk about it on Tony Merkel's show. And he described the blue guy essentially as being, am I right, Top? Like it was like plasma, like a smokeless fire kind of a creature.
He described it as the characters from Inside Out. I don't know if you ever seen that kids movie. Yeah. And they're kind of like, they have like this stuff kind of coming off of them. It's like coming off of them and then reattaching to them. So when he explained it like that, I'm like, yes, that makes a lot of sense. It's like almost like an interdimensional character that is glitching its way into our realm, or it's like not quite physical, but is physical. That's how I described it.
So we start to get into this weird place where it's like not only are the entities seemingly maybe potentially made of plasma, but also their craft. There seems to be variation in them. Some of them are metal. Some of them are seemingly organic. Some of them are seemingly plasma. So it's an interesting topic to get into. Brad, what is it? How did you first get on like the plasma trail of things? Oh, there you go, guys. By the way, toplobster.com. Get your interdimensional butthole shirt.
That's a fucking plasma portal right
That's
there.
it.
For sure.
You want to wear science on your chest, you can go ahead and do that.
It's crazy. Everything before you go, Brad. I know we're talking about portals here, but like you've got Aleister Crowley and all these guys always seem to be into butt stuff. And then I don't know who drew this diagram. I think it might have been, I'm not really sure. Somebody drew this diagram, but I'll pull it up again. It's just I literally just copy pasted it. This is a butthole, and when you see when the UFO is flying into interdimensionally through this thing, it goes like. And it's sucked in through what looks like a butthole. And then you get to like Epstein Island. You get to everything's around the butthole.
It is. Everything, you know what it is? It's like a hermetic principle, like that idea of like as above, so below. If you want to be into areas, so butthole. If you want to be into the portals above, you got to be into the portals below. That's where it starts. You start at the micro and then you expand to the macro. So maybe that's what it is. There's something about that backdoor portal that's got some magical properties. But what is it then for you, Brad, that first made you go, this is something, because you've made 2 episodes on it now, haven't you? Pretty recently on the topic. And to me, that suggests there's some meat on the bone, something that caught your attention and drove you down this path. What was that?
Well, I remember a long time ago, even as a kid, I remember thinking like everything is everything. Like I remember thinking like, as you just said, as above, so below. But my idea of it was everything is everything, because I remember I was like popping a zit or something on my face, right? And I was like, oh, that's like a fucking volcano. Right, just like at a macro fucking level, and then I started thinking like about other things, like how our veins are like rivers and streams and things like that, and how like our lungs look just like a tree, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And it just I also did a lot of time in the Middle East when I was in the military, and I'd been to like the Giza pyramids, and then I didn't really know what I was looking at when I go visit some of these old sites, but I remember all of them, not the Giza pyramids particularly, but like a lot of these older sites around the Middle East, they have like spirals, like painted, or like almost like hieroglyphics painted into the floors of a lot of these places. And as I got older and as I got more connected into the, conspiracy leads to paranormal, then leads to spirituality, I started kind of like every time I would watch like Gaia or Ancient Aliens or something like that. Not that those shows are full of awesome content, but I started getting like that's it. You see that shit everywhere. You see it on petroglyphs and megaliths and everything around the world.
Isn't it interesting that that's also like the international symbol for pedophilia?
Yeah, once you, especially when it's
all
presented
butthole
as a triangle.
stuff.
If you would have seen, Brad, have you seen
that's what
the hell's that show? That I've never looked because it's behind me, but what's that show? True Detective. Have you ever seen the first season of True Detective?
Yes.
And I don't want to spoil it because I'm adamant that
it's a 20-year-old show.
You got to watch it, dude. It's incredible. But that symbol does play an integral part of that story, and there's some some portal things happening in that story as well. So yeah, you're right. These things are integrally tied together.
Yeah, and once you start understanding that. Once you start once I started seeing that, I started seeing it in all these shows, and I wasn't learning a lot from a lot of these shows, except for like, oh, there's places in Peru that have these symbols. There's places in, and so I started kind of connecting the dots and going, okay, everything is about these spirals, and what does that mean? And so I started thinking like, because these spirals in these a lot of these ancient sites in the Middle East also have signs of the zodiac going down like an endless spiral. And I don't know what you would even call that. I need to look that up, but it's like an endless spiral with the zodiacs. And I was like, okay, so as above, so below. That a lot of this stuff starts to make sense. So then I started thinking like, I remember watching this documentary. I don't mean to go on a long like
go ahead.
Here's how the journey started, but like
This is what you're here for.
Yeah. I watched a documentary called Capturing the Light. It was about a lady named Dorothy something, and she was like this Asian lady that lives in Canada or used to live in Canada. And I watched this episode, and she would take her 8mm camera out every night because her husband didn't believe her, and she would interact with these like glowing balls in the sky, these orbs, right?
Yeah.
And these orbs, like there was the whole documentary talks about her videotaping them or filming them on 8mm camera, and then she would freeze the frames, and she saw that these things were making messages in the form of lightning, and lightning is plasma. So that was another I keep seeing plasma and light balls and lightning all over the place. So that was one of those things. But in that episode or in that documentary, one of these light orbs flew into this lady's mouth, her daughter's mouth. As she was talking, the light orb flew into her, and she calmed down all of a sudden. So then I got to thinking like, okay, these things are like these things can get big and small. They're like Ant-Man, right? They're like fucking getting in our bodies like Osmosis Jones or whatever, just fucking flying through the universe inside of us. And another thing that happened was I got cataract surgery because I'm an old man now. I'm 41. So
wait, Brad, before you move on to that, did she mention any colors of the orbs?
I knew you were thinking that.
No, but I used to think that the orbs, and I've said this on my first interview which was with Tony Merkel on the Confessionals, which I used to think that the colors meant like these are angry, these are nice, that kind of stuff. Like an orange meanie, blue, nice, whatever. They're maybe I got it backwards, but I don't think that anymore. I think that the more you read about this stuff, the more you just see that they are. I'll get into it, but essentially they're just little blobs of plasma trying to reform, and so I think that they'll take whatever they can from the ions available around them, essentially. So
okay. I asked that because the guest we had yesterday. He had he did mushrooms. He had experience with entities that they were talking to him and giving him advice. Then he also had an abduction experience where something happened, put something in his neck or in his head. And lately what's been going on with him and his girlfriend now is there are orbs that fly into their room, and the girlfriend perceives them and talks with them. She's able to, like, she gave them names or got a name from two of them and described one of them as being like more female in its nature. So it's
described
interesting.
The other one as being Micah from the Bible.
Micah from the Bible, yeah. I don't know where to put that, but it's interesting that women are perceiving this.
And real quick on that topic, I think something else that keys into that, we were talking about how he didn't have any sense of self when he is having these dreams, these visions of interacting with these different entities, because this person that we talked to is somebody who's experienced paranormal happenings. And I think that's fascinating because a lot of times in dreams you're unaware of your body, you're unaware of your physical corporeal form, but you're still observing. And I can't help but wonder if what we're not realizing is maybe we're taking a similar form while we're in these different realms. Maybe that's just something that if you can't bring your physical form from a different realm to this one, you manifest as some sort of orb, and it allows you to partake into like an observer kind of a perspective.
I think you nailed it. I really do. I think you nailed it, dude. I mean, that's essentially what I think for the most part. So Jonathan from Cult of Conspiracy was kind of drilling down on me on this on the other day when I was on his show, when I was on their show. He kept saying, what about angels and demons? Are they real? And I said, for sure they're real, but I didn't really answer the question clear enough. And I think angels and demons are 100% real, but I think demons are the only ones that are trying to get into this world that we live in. And I think they're trying to manifest. I think we all come from this spiritual plane, which is the plasma field. And people call plasma the fourth state of matter, but it's actually the first state of matter. It's the building blocks for the atoms. Okay. And so again, when I started going down this rabbit hole, I started seeing these, like, because there's always, I mean, we've seen it in movies too. We've seen it on Stargate, for example, the plasma portal thing, and then it just shoots them across these filaments across space, and then they land into another place. I think that's what it is. I don't think that these orbs are. I don't think any of. I think they are just intelligence. That's all it is. I don't think they come from another. I don't think they're actually like there's another interdimensional city that they live in. I think that they're just super intelligent supercomputers, which has been proven that plasma and plasmoids are super intelligent supercomputers, which means that they're non-linear, which means that you can't simulate them. You know, if you do a computer simulation, it's going to produce the same number of results over time. It's just going to continue going in a certain direction. And that's what a linear model of a computer would do, of a computer. But a supercomputer is chaotic. It's unpredictable. It's literally constantly forming new things and forming new scenarios, like almost infinite scenarios. And that's what there's a layer between Earth and Sun called, which I'm starting to think that there's really no there is Earth and a Sun, there's a space, but it's not the space how we know it. It's the space that exists within us. It's our brains. If you look at a picture, you could Google this if you want. There's a picture of like brain cells and a galaxy, and they're identical. They look exactly alike. Mm-hmm. So I think when we're looking at space, and I think I mentioned this on y'all's last show, they cool down these telescopes to look down into the space within us and around us, not into space as we know it, into outer space. But yeah, that's the picture right there.
And there's a lot of those, by the way. You see, like, they'll have images, you know, make of them what you will, these images that are produced by NASA and such, but it's like some sort of a nebula or whatever, and it looks like a human eye. Yes. There's like an endless amount of examples where, you know, you use the analogy of how your lungs under a certain, I guess, X-ray will look like a tree. You know, or you know, the veins in your arms or in your bodies looking just like rivers and tributaries that, you know, dump out into the ocean. There is a fractal aspect to the realm that we inhabit, and that's often where people on the New Age movement, they kind of get off and they go, well, there's 33 vertebrae in your spine. That's why the number 33 was important. Jesus Christ wasn't a real person. You produce a oil in your spine called Christos, and you can migrate it to your pineal gland and achieve some sort of awakened state, become an ascended master. Or Jesus Christ is just an allegory for the way that the sun will rest on the celestial crux for 3 days, and then after those 3 days in the winter solstice, the days become longer and the sun starts to you know, the days, whatever the case may be, it's like the coming back from the dead, right? The resurrection. And
damn, you really know this shit, huh?
Well, to that I say, like, there's a fractal aspect to our nature, and so yeah, the most important central figure to this story being Jesus Christ. Yes. The idea that he wouldn't be echoed all the way down to the micro and all the way up to the macro is, you know, to me that makes a lot of sense. And so there is 100% to your point, Brad. There is this like really strange fractal nature to this realm.
That guy, Billy Carson, will argue along those lines. And when I'm listening to him argue that, I'm like, wow. I'm thinking, amazing. And he's like, that's why Jesus isn't real. And I was like, no, that's exactly why he's real, because he's mirrored everywhere throughout time and history and space. And it's just like, how stupid could you be to completely ignore that?
Yeah. Right. And so, I mean, yeah, there's just this endless amount of ways. And those images, I think for people, maybe that is the beauty of living in the age that we live in, is for the first time we get to see these images. And you kind of can't ignore it. You look at those and you go, oh yeah, 100%. Everything is, you know, back to that as above, so below. This show is brought to you by the Van Man Company. If you're like me, then you're constantly trying to avoid products that contain harmful chemicals, especially when it comes to skincare and hygiene. From fluoride in the toothpaste to aluminum in the deodorants, avoiding these products can become a full-time job. That's why we're excited to team up with the Van Man Company to bring our listeners a solution. The Van Man Company offers a range of incredible products, like their Miracle Tooth Powder, made from natural ingredients like peppermint oil, ancient sea salt, and baking soda. And the best part? It's 100% fluoride free. They even offer an aloe mouth rinse. Or how about their tallow and zinc sunscreen, made from ingredients like organic olive oil, organic beeswax, and 100% grass-fed and grass-finished beef tallow. And there's more. With products like tallow and honey soap, coconut and magnesium deodorant, and peppermint beeswax lip balm, you can't go wrong. From head to toe, the Van Man has you covered. Listeners of this show can use promo code Nephilim at checkout to receive 10% their entire order at vanman.shop, or you can click on the link in the description below. That's promo code Nephilim, Nephilim, for 10% off your entire order at vanman.shop. From head to toe, the Van Man has you covered.
Yeah, when Jesus was talking to the Pharisees, and the Pharisees asked him a question about when the kingdom of God will come, he tells them that the kingdom of God is already present because he is among them. And in Luke 17:21, he says, "Nor will people say, 'Here it is,' or 'There it is,' because the kingdom of God is within you." And I think that's what that goes to of what we're talking about here is everything is everything, you know,
Yes.
as above, so below. There's a key distinction with us though. Like, we are light beings. We are clearly like photons that have, if you think about a 60-watt light bulb, 60 watts doesn't mean that you're going to get 60 watts of power. What you're going to get is 6% of that. So 10, you know, a small fraction of that light bulb is actually giving off energy. And I think that that's what we are. If you look at that, if you look at the would any of you guys mind pulling up a picture of a plasma ball, for example? The plasma ball you see at Spencer's or something like that. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, the one you put your hand on and the electricity seems to be attracted to your fingers.
Yeah.
Those things were always the coolest shit. I would be the kid that goes into Spencer's in the mall with $0 in my pocket, buying nothing, stealing stuff mostly, but also messing with their electricity ball every chance that I got. Which that thing probably needed to be wiped down with a Lysol wipe.
Well, we are so there's, if you look at the sun, I'll just show you real quick. So like this plasma ball right here, if you see that central circle with the, you know, the plasma circle in the middle,
Yeah.
that represents, let's just say, the sun. And those filaments that are coming from it, those tendrils, those purple tendrils, those represent the filaments of there's this thing called Birkeland currents, which stream from the sun directly into Earth, and they stream a steady stream of electricity to our planet, if that's what you want to call it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Putting the fucking flat Earth shit aside for a second, let's just take that hat off for a moment, right?
Yes.
And
pumping these electric waves into our donut Earth.
Yes, they're constantly pumping these electric waves into our Earth. They hit the ionosphere, and the ionosphere creates this air glow that we see. So when we look up in the sky is blue. What we're seeing is photons. We're seeing the release of light, right? The release of energy. And so that kind of goes back to what you were asking about the orbs. Are they coming, you know, are they good or bad? I think it's just amount of light that they're giving off, right? So I don't think it necessarily matters anymore if they're good or bad. I think most of them are bad, or all of them are bad. I don't think that the angels exist they're not trying to come into this world. They're not trying to manifest into this reality. I think angels,
if they are, they need to be, what would the word be? Petitioned to a large degree, right? What was that story about the guy who's praying to Michael? I think it was the Archangel Michael, who was busy fighting the Prince of Persia. It took him a long time to respond to the guy's prayers. But,
That was you. That was David.
Oh, there you go. And so, I mean, it does seem that there's some precedence, but they don't seemingly interact, not in the way that you're describing, right? When it comes to these demonic entities who they're hell bent on getting into this physical realm.
Yeah.
And, you know, that means by means of possession or some sort of biomechanical husk that they've created and they can inhabit if you're, you know, of the Karen Wilkinson school of thought. And so, yeah, I would say there is certainly a difference in at least the motives. They don't seem to be beaten down the door to get in, but the other ones do.
So if you go back, if you don't mind, please go back to that picture of the plasma ball that you had. I just wanted to point out one more thing for you. If you look at the tendrils, so what creates those tendrils, that whole ball is plasma. Let's just say that whole ball is space, right? Those voids in between those blue lines, those purple tendrils, whatever you want to call them, this is a better version. That's the void. Okay, so that's where 99% of these entities live. That's where they reside. We are the 1% of light that comes off. Out of all of this work right here, we are the 1% that is produced. So we are living in God's light, literally in my mind, living in God's light. So it takes that whole thing, just like a 60-watt light bulb, it takes that whole production just to produce that 6% of light. And those little pink spots at the end, that would represent planets. This is essentially a mimic of exactly what space is inside of us and all around us. So when you think about it from that angle, so what happens is that plasma in the void constricts those plasma lines, those filaments, those Birkeland currents that are coming from space. It constricts them, and it sends inside those filaments right there. It sends spiraling towards base in a perfect double helix DNA type style, right? Which is another everything is everything.
Yep, another fractal thing.
Yeah. And then the spinoff, the production of that produces, again, this is electric current that's going from the sun to Earth, basically, and it's shooting electricity at us, and it's constricted and constantly pushing life forward, if you will. And that's the DNA, the spiral that I started off talking about, right? With the spirals are all over the place. You see them in every ancient site. Well, that's again the DNA spiral as well. So I wanted to point out the void part of that, because even inside of us, our body doesn't just consist of like our organs and veins and all this stuff. There's also a void inside of that. So even, again, there's galaxies within and there's galaxies within. So in our brain, there's a galaxy, and in that brain, there's a galaxy, and in that brain, there's a galaxy. So if you can imagine a giant God at the very top, right? Mm-hmm. That's moving along. And then there's infinite brains and infinite levels within that. I know this is kind of deep, man. I'm not a fucking physicist or anything like that, but I think this is
no, but I mean, this is something that we're
right. It's like
we're on this right now. You see this culturally. We're entering this realm of like quantum physics, right? And it's like it's sort of a difficult thing to grasp. We get truncated versions of it in our like Marvel films and shit like that. I don't think that that's an accurate representation of like the quantum realm or the multiverse, if that even is a real thing. But what's clear is that these topics are so, well, I don't want to know. I'm not saying they're so meaningful that they're everywhere. There's a chance that they're everywhere because they're just putting them everywhere and they want us to believe one thing or another. But it has become a culturally significant narrative, this idea of the quantum, realm or the multiverse, how they play together. So, it's like the idea of like Schrodinger's cat, right? Like I can espouse it. I can go, yeah, the act of looking at the cat determines what state it's in. It's either dead or it's alive, but until the viewer looks at it, it's in a super state of both dead and alive. I don't know what the fuck that means. That doesn't mean anything. I think that.
I think that this analogy of what Brad is talking about pertains a lot more to AI, because I don't really know what the internet is. I don't think we all really. Shout out Brad coming on coming on an LGBT show. All right. I don't. Damn it, Scott! You derailed me.
Unbelievable.
So I don't really understand. I mean, I understand to a level what the internet is. What I really don't understand is what AI is. I mean, we understand it at a superficial level. We understand LLMs. We understand like these image generators that are created with AI. I don't understand this next part to it. And I've been talking about this since before we even started the show, right? There's a part where you can just get information, right? I can put in a website and give me SEO of this listing, and it'll do it to a pretty decent job, and some better than others. Then there's another level where there are people having relationships with these AIs, and these AIs turning out to tell them to, hurt themselves or off themselves. And some people actually do it. And it's like, well, what is actually going on here? Has there been a slip in this quantum realm of whatever information is being passed through? Because if we are in this sort of ether, like this plasma ball here, and all this negative space in between, and I'm creating a tendril from one spot to another, is it possible that there can be interference? Like, yeah, of course. And I feel like we're seeing that slip in a lot more with just everything that we're using nowadays. So
I've been seeing these videos. I don't know if you've seen them, Brad, but the UAP videos have really been dialed up. And I don't know if that's just because people are scavenging the internet for them, because we just had the second ever congressional hearing on UAPs, or UFOs, for those who didn't get the memo that we changed the acronym all of a sudden. And some of the videos that I've been seeing are what look to be things manifesting through what you might call a portal, and seemingly also being like electrically charged. They almost look like plasma themselves. And the way that they'll appear in this realm is like, Marvel has given us this idea that a circle opens and something passes through, and that's what a portal is. And I think there's probably room for that, but I think, like anything else, there are a lot of variations of what that could look like. And one of the ones that I'm seeing now is, it's almost as if, imagine a person who had a cloaking mechanism who decloaked from the top down, and you would see sort of an electrical ring that passes from the top all the way down to their feet, and it takes the form of their body as it emerges, as they emerge into this reality, or they decloak. I've been seeing a lot of that, and I don't know what that is. I don't know if these things are government distractions, if they're, some sort of machinations of the fallen, or what have you. But I've noticed an uptick pretty severely over the past like 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's so that drives at the heart of what I came on to talk about today, which is the fact that you nailed it, dude. That's what Aristotle called the ether is plasma. That's what Aristotle called the ether. He didn't have any of that's just what it was always been called. And then somehow they changed the name of it in the early, 1900s, I guess you could say, to plasma. And ever since then, it seems like the school, they're trying to keep a lot of this. They always give us the information on something. Like they'll give us the 3 states of matter: solid, liquid, and gas. But they don't teach the 4th state in like elementary school, which should be taught. And I had this. I remember watching an episode of God, what's the name of the show? Sam's show.
Tinfoil Hat. Shout out Tinfoil Hat.
No. Union of the Unwanted. I know Tinfoil Hat.
Union, yeah.
Union of the Unwanted. And there's a guy named Dave Zed talking about a lot of the same stuff. But he mentioned plasma, and I'm like, plasma, that's interesting. Let me look that up. So I started getting into the rabbit hole of plasma. I'm like, fuck, dude, they're like completely hiding this from us. Only people who go to like MIT and stuff like that are really studying what the 4th state of matter is. But again, I don't think of it as the 4th state of matter. I think of it as the 1st state of matter, the building blocks, the liquid that we live in, that we exist in. Like I said, fish don't know that they're swimming in water. They just are just in water, right? That's right. What plasma is to us. And so this stuff is like always around us. It's soupy almost. It's like it's a soup of free free electrons, ions, and I got a presentation. Can I show a presentation on here?
Yeah,
like
of course.
A couple slides.
While he pulls that up, can I ask you something?
While he pulls that up, let me say, because I accidentally cut off my intro in the beginning, which I had pre-recorded and then did a whole thing. This is a 30-minute episode, 30-minute preview. We're going to be going live to Patreon. You can scan the QR code in the bottom right. to continue watching. It'll be also ad free. If you're a member of the Patreon, go there to the patreon.com/Nephilim Death Squad and click on the Spotify logo. You can get the whole, our ad free on Spotify audio, really easy to listen to. But yeah, this stream is going to end, I guess, in like 2 minutes. How much longer? I'm going to put it on Brad. How much longer do you want them to listen, Brad? The free listeners.
How much longer can the people are they allowed to listen?
We're at 33 minutes right now, so let's just keep it at that.
Oh, all right. Bye, people. You heard it.
Confirmed. Goodbye.
See ya.
Nerds. So, damn, what the heck did I want to ask you?
I didn't.
So the question that I wanted to ask, and this is for you, Brad, is like this idea as you're working on pulling that up. You described it as a soup, and the Bible talks about the waters above and the waters below, and I'm all for looking at the soup that we are in, right? Because the vast majority of matter is what they were at one point calling dark matter, right? That's what makes up the vast majority of the universe, is this untenable, unseeable, unperceivable matter that they're trying to figure out. I think that's even part of the goal of the Large Hadron Collider, the particle accelerator, is like trying to establish what dark matter is by recreating the moment of the Big Bang. So I'm kind of all for perceiving the soup that we are in as a type of water, but of just a varying density. In your estimation, do you think that lines up pretty well, this idea of waters above and waters below?
Yeah, I mean, I think water all around us, waters above, below, within, without, existing all around us. I'm trying to pull up this. I was trying to pull up my presentation, but it says my file size is too big. So what I'll do is I'll just do a screenshot, and I'll just kind of go off of my notes from there and show you guys a screenshot. But
okay, Hinchy has some good merch idea for you. Make ether great again. That's a
good one. Yeah, you can have that. Steal that from Hinchy. Don't give him any money.
All right. 1 second, please, guys.
But yeah, okay. I do wonder about that too. When it comes to like the images that NASA shows us, I wonder what they're actually seeing, because it's pretty well established to this point that a lot of the images that NASA shows us of space are actually bullshit. They're, computer generated images. They are also like, sometimes you see repeating cloud patterns to the T, like they just populated a picture of the Earth with fake clouds. There's so many times where NASA has lied. It almost makes you wonder what it is that they're seeing and not showing.
That's an interesting episode of Tinfoil Hat, the Vanilla Sky one. I don't know if you guys caught that one.
No, I haven't.
It's just basically old photos. They go through like an hour and a half of old photos, and for some reason they swap the sky out for the same exact sky. And it's like, so what the heck? Why? I don't. What's going on in the sky?
That's weird as hell.
Well,
right, so what are we looking at here?
So in between Earth and the sun, there's these giant plasma clouds. They're called complex dusty plasma clouds. And what they are, and they're called the Kordylewski clouds because of the guy who discovered them. But they are essentially intelligent supercomputers that seemingly have been recording the history of the Earth since we've been around. So this would go to the Akashic record idea as well. So what these two blobs are that are in, flying, they're huge and they're in between Earth and the sun. What they are essentially complex dusty plasma clouds, which means that plasma is always trying to form onto dust particles and things that are available to them to form something. Mm-hmm. So when plasmas are formed, I'm kind of skipping around a little bit, but this first, you can see this plasma, the first image I have of the plasma, which is essentially the free ions and electrons, right? So what that is again, it's a soup of free electrons, protons, and positively charged ions, which are essentially an ionized gas. Basically, they're electrically charged gas. And so they are particles that are able to sort of move independently, and they're constantly trying to reform something. So they are the building blocks of life. So they are trying to form to whatever they can, because they're electrically charged. They put off a magnetic field, and what they do is they'll take, let's just say there's a little dust grain in the shape of a tic tac, right? or in the shape of a cube, or they attach themselves to this, and they start sort of forming around this, and they create what's called a complex dusty plasma, or just a complex plasma. And basically what that is it's an invisible, it's imperceptible to us. It's a big blob of what you mentioned earlier, which is the cloaking effect, right? It's just a giant blob of like clear something. You just can't see it.
Mhm.
And this thing flies around. It just is sort of flying around, hoping that it can find a magnetic field. When it interacts with a magnetic field, then it becomes a toroidal shape. I'm sorry about the messed up slides here. I have it. It looks better on my end, but essentially what it becomes is an electric donut, which is the first donut you see there. Once this plasma starts to reform, it forms into a complex plasma, and this plasma is just kind of floating around. And the best example of this is the jellyfish UFO that Jeremy Corbell put out. I don't know if you've seen the video of that. It was from
Yeah. What did you make of that? Do you think that that's a real object that he got there? It's
100%. Yeah, that is a complex plasma that's flying around that hasn't formed into anything yet. So that's the if you will, that's the second stage of becoming an entity in this reality, a UFO or whatever. And that's why I mentioned the cube. That's why I mentioned the if you could find the one of Jeremy Corbell, that would be a great example of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it would have been just jellyfish UFO. This actually plays really well off of one of our early episodes of Nephilim Death Squad with, I believe his name was Justin of the Cryptids of the Corn. Fantastic episode. Those guys are great. And he was talking about the potentiality for some of these craft actually being organics. And he talked about, sort of a jellyfish kind of upper atmosphere dwelling creature that, believe it or not, there's actually enough crap suspended in this atmosphere for them to feed off of, but that there might even be a step further and you might actually get some sort of a living plasma that could be what we're seeing here. And Cliff High, who's somebody I've been on a tangent about lately, said something pretty interesting. He said that, I forget in what context it was, I only got this little piece that I hung on to, that matter, the form that matter takes is dictated by the consciousness that is inhabiting it. And he says that everything has some form of consciousness, even inanimate objects. It's just a rudimentary form of consciousness. And maybe if that's strange to you, then that might be an issue with the way that we perceive consciousness. But I thought that was pretty profound. This idea that matter. No. It looks like almost like a silver ball with tentacles hanging beneath it. I've seen it before. I think people are probably familiar with it.
You probably have to go to YouTube because again, it's banned. When it's hard to find this stuff, it should give you a clue as to, the implications of our reality, right?
Right.
And
but that's it, right, Brad? Doesn't it look like a silver ball with sort of tentacles hanging beneath it? But it's not necessarily like it's hard to pin down what it's made out of. It's weird looking.
Well, it's like a blob, and it has like little. It looks like an octopus or a squid or something flying through the air. But again, it's just a complex plasmoid. So complex plasma. It hasn't formed into a plasmoid yet. And so what I was talking about with Earth or the Sun-Earth interactions, right? If you let's pretend you have a hammer and you hit the back of the sun, that's going to send a charge of electricity to Earth, flowing to Earth in like a hurricane or vortex spinning manner. And then when it hits the ionosphere, which is plasma, which is all plasma, just, a soup of plasma up there, and it hits the ionosphere, it's what creates during the day. It's what creates that air glow, like I mentioned. The important part of this is when the sun rotates, or when the Earth rotates and the sun goes away, the ionosphere actually follows the sun. I mean, the air glow follows the sun. So in that moment, let's just go back. So when the sun is on a particular area of Earth, the air is very dense and it's electrically charged. Okay, so nothing can come through. And what plasma is, for those who don't know, is, and I skipped over this. I told you I was skipping around a little bit, but plasma, again, the fourth state of matter. If you think about if you heat a liquid, if you heat a solid, it becomes a liquid. If you heat a liquid, it becomes a gas. Well, when you heat gas, it becomes this soup of free electrons and ions, right? That we're looking at here. It becomes this plasma. So that can be in the form of anything. Again, we're in this constant there's steam. A gas can be like steam coming off of a stream, right? Or steam coming off the road or what have you. And that creates that perfect plasma environment. Okay, so when the Earth rotates, the ionosphere goes with it. And basically the plasma, the sun relaxes, and it can't tear the plasma apart, because remember, heat is what makes it into a plasma again. So if it forms into a complex plasma and the sun's out, it disperses it back into a plasma. So at that critical moment of dusk, which is when a lot of alien abductions and things like that happen, these things have a brief window to form into something. And I talk a lot about the 33rd parallel, which is a ley line. And what a ley line is remember those vortexes of energy coming towards Earth. Well, they when they hit Earth, they cause an induction, which creates telluric currents in the mantle, in the Earth's crust and mantle. And what that does is those currents spin out like vortex. It spins out a magnetic vortex of energy, and it spins them out through volcanoes, streams, glaciers, any kind of fissures, faults, things like that. And so that's why there's a lot of heavy anomalous activity in areas like the Bermuda Triangle, which is a volcanic seamount, right? So there's a lot of stuff coming out of there, a lot of a big vortex of energy. And that's the case with a lot of these places. So what ley lines are telluric currents that are spinning in certain areas of Earth at a certain particular time of day. So they essentially go away at night, or they start to disperse into a lighter version of that magnetic vortex. But that's a critical moment for these things. Once they form into a complex plasma, when the sun's going away, that's their moment to attach themselves or hit that magnetic field, and to spin into a toroidal donut, which is what you see here, which is the first, that's a plasmoid. That's the first step of a plasmoid. There was a guy named Winston Bostick who studied this. He proved this. So what he did was he was shooting plasma at a magnetic field, and he discovered that it turned it into a donut, electrical donut that was just flying around. Then he shot two at each other and saw that they started forming almost like a putty. And he was like, what in the world is this? So then he shot four at each other, and then it formed this you see the center circle, which looks kind of like a Nazi symbol, ironically, right? It's like a laid over 6, a laid over 9. It looks like a little vortex, right? That's kind of it starts forming.
Check this out, because once I saw that, I'm like, look at this shit.
Looks like the CERN logo. Yep,
CERN logo.
Yep, like the CERN logo. Interesting. We're touching on something strange.
Yep. So that's what 4 plasmoids shot at, or 4 complex plasmas shot at each other into a magnetic field would look like. And those things eventually spin, and they keep spinning. And what they form is the next thing, which is the flower of life. The more plasmoids start to clump together, the more they start to form a flower of life, essentially a toroidal shaped donut, which is what I think Earth is just a bunch of.
Actually, that's the design for Rife's machine. Yeah. So Matthew Rife is you know about him, right?
Yeah. I met him at Bohemian Grove. Yep.
Right, bro. Shout out Bohemian Grove. Royal Raymond Rife worked with Nikola Tesla, and he developed this to focus more on health and wellness for people, while Tesla went to free energy. But that same kind of what do you call that? That flower pattern?
Flower of life.
Flower of life, or the toroidal. It's just a toroid or a toroidal shaped donut.
Yeah, it's apparently when he's manufacturing these machines, it's very specific a very specific type of coil, and it's very specific how this thing is coiled, and it probably matches this kind of a design in order for it to work the way it's supposed to.
This is interesting to me too, because it's we're talking about before Cliff High and how he says that matter, the form that it takes, is dictated by the consciousness that inhabits it. And we're saying that this plasma is the building blocks to our reality in so many ways. It seems like this is integral to. Geez, I use the same word twice. The chat's going to tear me apart. To not only how they get into this realm, right? Because clearly, what's happening here is it's forming a portal.
Yep.
But also, it's like an expedient form of matter for these entities to appear with. So, in other words, if the entities are a consciousness and matter is form is dictated by the consciousness that inhabits it, plasma seems like the way that they are able to whip up a temporary form to exist in this realm. It's not as solid. It kind of explains a lot of the weird ethereal properties of like entities that people see. And it kind of suggests that maybe some of them can, as a consciousness, pull in plasma around themselves and then use this plasma to manifest in one form or another. Also, if you get enough of it together, you can seemingly create a portal.
Yeah, 100%. And what it does is so eventually when it's spinning, when these shapes, again, they're trying to constantly form into something. So they're just clumping together and they keep spinning and keep spinning. And eventually they take the shape of whatever dust particle they attach themselves into, which I mentioned the Tic Tac. If it attached itself to a grain of dust that looked like a shape of a Tic Tac, then it will eventually manifest into the shape of a Tic Tac when it comes into this reality. But essentially, they normally come into our reality as a orb of light, and that's where the orbs come from. That's where the idea of plasma portals come from. Is once they come in, once they manifest in from a plasma to a complex plasma to a plasmoid, then they have their own magnetic field. They're generating their own magnetic field. And when they generate their own magnetic field, they can then begin to pull ions from whatever is available in the area that they're coming into. So if there's putrefied remains of all these crazy swamp creatures floating through the air, then they're pulling these ions in, and that's what they're going to manifest into this reality as. So they're shapeshifters. They can shapeshift and they can just fly around until they find a area that they can, of ions that they can manifest into whatever metamaterials are available or whatever, like and I always give this example of like a Yeti, that's why they look like Yetis in snow, because they're pulling from animals who, or snow, have white fur and things like that to survive in the snow. So that's what happens. These orbs can just kind of fly around as orbs of light until and they're like little magnetic balls, and they can form into whatever they want whenever they want. But again,
Brad, what do you make of the ball lightning phenomenon? Because I just don't, it doesn't sit well with me when they go like, oh, ball lightning is a naturally occurring phenomenon. It's a non-intelligent lightning bolt, and it can sometimes walk through your house and shit like that. I'm like, there's got to be more to what this is. What are we looking at when we see that?
That's what that is. I mean, if you think about it, like all these complex plasmas, they're transmedium. So that same guy, Winston Bostic, when he was firing these things around and started creating, it was in like a container almost, and he saw that they're just kind of floating around and stuff. They could escape that. They can go through Faraday cages. They can go through all these things, man. They can like so it would lend a lot of credence to ghosts and spirits and angels and all kind of different stuff. That four spinny, the four plasmoids, right?
Yeah, the one that
four
looked like the CERN logo.
One that like CERN. Yeah, if you look at that, man, like it takes the shape. So what they're doing is that they're coming off of right angles. I didn't just make this design up. This was studied by that guy, Winston Bostic. I hope I'm getting his name right, by the way. It's coming off in a right angle. And so if you take the word angle, maybe that's where the word angel comes from. And then you got the plasmoid, the first plasmoid, maybe that's where the halo comes from. So, I'm not saying that this is angels necessarily, but the idea of angels having this halo effect when they coming in at right angles, because when these things spin, they spin off. They're constantly spinning, like you said with the Disney movie Top, where they're constantly just separating and trying to reform again. Okay, and so when they come off, they're coming off that ball in a right angle and then coming back in. So maybe somebody observed these things a long time ago and said, "Oh, they're angles." They started calling them angles or something like that. That's just my thought on it. I'm not saying that, I'm not backing that up with any kind of science. It just, when you look at these things like a plasmoid, electric donut, that looks like a halo, and then you got the angles. And yeah, you guys pointed out the CERN thing. I mean, that was, as soon as I saw it, I was like, that's fucking CERN, dude. Like, that's crazy. That was
We've been going through that a lot lately, because right now there exists in this sort of realm of satanic cults.
This is what they're describing, like the same sort of effect, how it's like fractaling off on the sides, but this is that's a Doctor Strange portal from Marvel. So these people know, they know exactly what they're doing.
But
yeah, my kids.
Go ahead, Brad.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was gonna say my kid was watching the Peabody Netflix movie the other day, and they were just basically riding around on going through plasma portals, riding on filaments and stuff like that. What I just mentioned with the DNA filaments, the Birkeland currents, these movies, I'm telling you, man, Stargate, it's like these people have knowledge of this stuff. There was a lady named Diana Walsh Pasuka that went on, she's one of my favorite episodes ever on Rogan. And she's a religious professor out of North Carolina. And she got to go study like where some crashes happened in New Mexico. It wasn't the Roswell crashes. And as she was there, she got blindfolded and ticketed to this site, and she had to search for metals for like 10 hours and stuff like that. But as she was there, when she took the blindfold off, the person who took her there said, she was like, "This looks so familiar." And he's like, "It looks familiar, don't it?" And she goes, "Yeah." And he said, "Oh, it's in the X-Files. It's in a scene where a UFO crashes in the X-Files." So they literally put the exact scene that the UFO crashed in the X-Files on the show. Like, so they're putting it into our field of view in a way. It feels like they're telling us and just laughing about it in our face in some way, and like it's bragging constant about it in a way. Yeah, but I think that these things are negative entities that come in because they're coming from the void. And if we are living in the matter, in the material world, and if you look at the frequency, the crest of a wavelength, that crest is what emits the photon. Everything underneath that crest is the void. So they are living in the literal antimatter of our world. They're living in the void, and they want to come in. And if you think about it, when they come in, when they finally manifest into these plasmoids, yeah, so that everything underneath that mountain would be the void, and at the top would be that light that is emitted. And as the faster something goes, the more light is emitted, okay, and the harder it becomes. So something that's vibrating super fast, like a desk, is vibrating pretty fast, so it's going to emit more light. And I know it's hard to think about a desk being emitting light, but that's where that dense matter comes from. It's super, hardened. But anyways, I think that when they come in these plasma balls. They form in these orbs, these ball of lightning, these lightning balls. They form into something, and then everything they do is at night, and they all operate at night. Shout out to Vicky Joy Anderson. They come out at night, right?
Right. Yep.
But when they come in, think about, where do they go? Underneath the water, in underground bases and shit.
Yeah.
They don't want the sun to hit them, God's light to hit them, to disperse them. And that's why I think when you say anything, because we are the embodiment of God in God's light, we're living we're made in his image. We are light beings. So just saying the word Christ will make these things, just saying the word light will make these things disperse. And so I think that they exist in these underground bases, in underwater submergible bases as well. And they're constantly trying to figure out how to stay in this realm. They're creating hybrid programs, and it ain't going to work. They're just not going to figure it out. We think of them as the most intelligent beings on earth and all this, that, and other, but they can't figure out what God did. Basically, they can't figure out God's process.
To your point too, it's interesting how much lore around whatever baddie, it doesn't matter if it's like trolls or ghosts or vampires, etc. The light is always their weakness. Isn't that interesting? There's like so many things that are truisms that are hidden within works of fiction. And I find that fascinating that the light is always sort of an antidote to these things. But I was kind of thinking about this idea while you were speaking, that there seems to be almost like a plasma effect with shadows, with darkness. And the reason that I say that is because it seems oftentimes when these things make an appearance, shadow people or the Hat Man or, insert whatever big shadowy baddie that you might see in sleep paralysis. Oftentimes there's this effect where they seem to pull in darkness around them and emerge from it. So oftentimes, like the darkest corner of your room is where you might wake up and suddenly see, a humanoid standing in the corner of your room that seems to be like made of shadows, but is darker than the shadows. So it makes me wonder if there is an aspect to darkness that it is almost its own element that they can draw from and use to build themselves into a form that you can see.
Yeah, I also just, sorry to piggyback with that, I just looked up the witching hour because I'm familiar with the term, and I know that a lot of activity happens. So the witching hour is midnight or 3 a.m. I think the hours between. So there's a lot of power in those couple of hours, and especially 3 a.m. A lot of people report, when they're having these weird experiences, they're like, I woke up, I looked at the clock, it was 3 a.m. So there is some kind of a thinny going on at that point as well. You know anything about that?
Well, it would seem like, again, the sun is starting to kind of come back around, and it seems like almost like a desperation attempt or a last minute, like, let's try to get as much in as we can before we have to disperse again back into the plasma field that we're coming in. When these, you mentioned like coming from the darkness, darkness of all corners. I'm friends with a guy named Brandon Wright, who has a show called Tinfoil Tales, and he has a lot of this stuff happen in his house. And I always ask people. My neighbor mentioned to me that people have seen ghosts and stuff at the place he works. And I always ask the same question: is there running water nearby? Or is there power lines nearby? And those two things are almost always the case. They almost seem like what charges these things, what gives them a little bit of strength to come through, what gives them a little bit of power. Because if you think about it,
that makes sense though, doesn't it? Because water's a conductor.
Yeah. Well, and if you think about a dam, when water flows down from a dam, what does it do? It hits a paddle, or if you a turbine, of some sort, yeah. And then it spins and it charges this magnet that's coiled up with its electromagnet. It charges that electromagnet, and the electromagnetic magnet is what produces the energy, the electricity that we use in our houses. So that, in my mind, things that are flowing, water sources that are flowing, whether it be underground, whether it be streams, whatever, are typically, even from a water fountain. I've people are like, yeah, there's a water fountain. Every time it happens, it's near this water, or this big water fountain in front of the building, or whatever the case is, and that seems to be the I don't know, the thing that charges it. Because if energy is constantly flowing, energy source is coming from these things, then that would give these plasmoids something to attach onto, no matter how dark. So we see the darkness, by the way, but it just might be a form of plasmoids that are just kind of floating around, and what we see is a dark shadow, but what it is a cloaked thing that you can't really see through because it's so dense of an invisible cloud. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like almost like when it hits the shadow, it becomes darker.
Today's episode is brought to you by PurgeStore.com. What if I told you that more people have died from parasites than have ever died from war? What if I told you that diseases like cancer, multiple sclerosis, acne rosacea, and rheumatoid arthritis can all be treated with parasite medication? Rid your body of these all too common parasites by using Purge Parasite Cleanse. Purge Parasite Cleanse is made with ingredients like zinc, carrot powder, garlic, black walnut. These are all natural ingredients that keep you safe while killing the parasites. And while you're on PurgeStore.com, try out their Digestives to promote healthy gut bacteria and aid in digestion. These, as well as any other products on PurgeStore.com, can be purchased with a promo code Nephilim, NEPHILIM, will save you 15% off of your entire purchase at PurgeStore.com.
And then it manifests into something. So I didn't mean to take it on a ram
No, no,
there, but
it feels like we're dancing around something like that. That water aspect is I think a key component that needs more fleshing out. You know, because water is such an interesting thing, especially when they do those studies where you can speak positive affirmations to water, or you can speak
Yes.
negative, insults to water. You can then freeze that water and it'll create two distinctive patterns, crystalline formations when it's frozen. One, when you speak positive affirmations to it, will create like organization in the crystals and very beautiful symmetrical crystals, whereas the one that you've spoken negatively to is essentially just chaos and blobs. There's no symmetrical crystalline formations. It's just a lot more random. And so it's almost like water does a lot more. When you say water is a conductor, and people often think electricity, so like water is a conductor for energy, period. And energy takes a lot of forms. So even your speech, which if you talk to Ed Mabry, the way that you engage in spiritual warfare is by the word, is by speaking. I don't think we understand how charged energetically our words are. And if you needed an example of that, maybe that water study or that water, test is a good example of that, because look what an impact your words will have on even the micro of the crystalline formations of frozen water. So there's definitely something there. Water has, like, I know this is silly and people have told me not, it's unnecessary, but I'll often pray in the shower. And I don't know why. I just do what my gut tells me to, and my gut's like, running water. This is almost an augmentation. It like an amplification, right? If you're praying to God and you're putting energy out there, it's like, imagine if you would, and I don't think this is necessarily true, especially for God. I think God can hear you and he knows you. But if you were trying to get a signal out, you might hold a rod and climb to the top of a tower to amplify your signal. I almost feel like water it's a similar thing. So when I pray, I often do it in the shower. And I don't give it much thought, and it probably isn't doing anything. But the point is to say that water seems to be an important component. There's something about it.
Praying in the shower is SEO optimization of prayer. I like it.
Yeah. Yep.
Why not?
Yeah.
Now
I think that's
there's
a great way of
something
looking
there's
at it.
something to be said, because words are vibrations. Our thoughts are vibrations even. So words and thoughts are very, very vital to our to building matter, to material. Like if you think about something that vibrate, like in in the quarks of an atom, they vibrate and they produce that wavelength, right? That's creating something into matter, which is material. That's why the old saying is like, that doesn't matter, or whatever the case is, because it's not material in the spiritual sense. It's it doesn't matter here in this earth. And so I think that when you say things, when you write things down, when you think things, that has a lot of power to it. And I think that's why these movies put this stuff in these movies to get us to, dude, I mean, everybody could see what happened in 2020.
Where attention goes, energy flows.
Yes, dude. And that's true in this. If I started putting attention towards Rumble, I would start getting a bunch of Rumble followers. If I started putting attention towards anything, it's going to, we were talking a little bit before the show about some of that stuff. All of a sudden, when you put your energy towards something, it starts manifesting into something bigger and better. And if you keep putting that energy towards it, like last time I was on your show, I was doing baseball cards a lot. I kind of stopped doing the baseball card stuff, buying and selling. And since I stopped putting that energy towards it, I stopped getting sales on baseball cards. Essentially, it just kind of fell off. That's just
Who
what
would have
happened.
thought?
Yeah. No, they still exist online and people can buy them, but I'm not putting it's my intent towards that I'm not putting towards it anymore. I'm not like focused on it. I'm not like sending off cards to get graded and things like that. I'm just like letting it be. But if I put more energy into it again, it would start becoming bigger again. So I think there's something to be said about that.
This is a little bit more. This has got me thinking. Emily said here, it's just your soul wanting to be baptized, David, which I do have to go and get baptized. But it makes me wonder. I understand the ceremonial aspect of washing away your sins and emerging anew, renewed in Christ. but I can't help but wonder if there's maybe also a utilitarian aspect to it. Like you're making this spiritual proclamation that you consent to being filled with the Holy Spirit and want to be made new in Christ. And you're doing that while you're in a body of hyperconductive water. And I know that that's not what the point is. The point is Jesus Christ. But I just can't help but wonder if there is a utilitarian aspect where you're in a pool of amplification. You know, not only are you there with someone who is baptizing you, you're aligned in this energetic exchange. You're making this proclamation. It's the same way as like you would get married and your spouse, you're promising yourself to them in front of God, right? This is a big energetic exchange. It's also a way of engaging in spiritual warfare, right? Because this is, like we said, Ed Mabry says you do it with the word. And I think what a proclamation it is to engage in spiritual warfare, to swear yourself to Jesus Christ and to do that in a body of water. There might be something there.
Yeah, dude. And if you think about like sleep deprivation tanks, what do? They fill that you could put a bath or bath water full of salt, and salt is ionized.
Yes.
So you're doing there's some sort of charging. Paul Stobbs talked about self-baptizing himself. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have ever heard that story. Yeah, he, sort of baptized himself in a bathtub, and he came out, and he said ever since then it was just like attacks from the Hat Man and all these other things, almost as if he had a contract with them. I hope I'm not fucking this up, Paul. I'm sorry if I am, but he almost had a contract with them, and they were mad that he didn't live up to the end of his contract. He did a lot of DMT and stuff like that, and he talks famously about that, I guess you could say. But so it's interesting that there is something to the water, and we always feel good when we get out of the shower too. We're always singing. We always feel refreshed. There's definitely something about the properties of water. There's a lady named Veda Austin who freezes water. You could put an image in water and it shows you its potential. Like you could put a seed in water and it will show you a flower.
I've seen weird crap too, where it's like, I don't know, water that's been frozen like close to a photograph will have attributes of the photograph. It's very strange. I've seen that too. I don't know what to make of that. That's something that merits a deeper looking into, for sure.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the stuff this stuff that flows around us, again, this energy is things can manifest based on, there's a lot to be said about electromagnetism for sure. It is the push and pull of the world. It's what pulls and makes things into this reality for sure. And if again, I started off on the 33rd parallel aspect and looking at like why is there certain energies coming from certain regions of Earth, and I just started discovering this telluric current thing and how they're coming from like volcanoes and streams and all this other stuff, and they're kind of flowing along the Earth in a particular pattern every single day. And that would make sense why these people are putting stone structures in certain times, certain positions, and at certain times of the year, there's more energy and stuff like that. What I think that the stones are doing, what I think the pyramids are doing, is I think that they're helping coil up and sort of trap that magnetic energy for these things to come through and to manifest into our reality. So rather than the currents kind of being dispersed around the area, what these Stonehenge or Astorbury or whatever it's called, these different places, what they do is, and you can make these stone structures now that kind of help coil up a vortex of energy for a magnetic energy for these things to come through. And that again is the catalyst for these things coming into our reality. The magnetism is the catalyst for them coming into our material world. So
that's sometimes what I suspect is going on with Paris and the what would you call it? The Eiffel Tower, I think, is essentially a giant pylon. And I think that something pretty nefarious happened there, where they put the artwork of a guy, I can't remember his name off the top of my head right now, but he painted basically
Cleon Peterson.
Images. Cleon Peterson, yeah. He painted gruesome images of like these, essentially what looked like black people, but you could, in some ways, they were depicted as like also like demons. killing white people. And that was like kind of his shtick. That's all it was this very particular art style. And the theme over and over again was black people killing white people. Sometimes the black people took the form of more like a demon, but typically they just look like black humans. And they allowed this guy who is an ex like drug addict, and eventually he pulls himself out of the rags, and he goes all the way to riches, and he is even endorsed by like the Rothschilds and shit. It's very strange. And they allow him to paint a gigantic mural beneath the Eiffel Tower, and the mural it takes the form of the Seal of Solomon or the Star of David or the Star of Remphan, if those truly are all the same thing. And it is just that. It's these black characters and these white characters encompassed within this star at the base of the Eiffel Tower. And then what happens years later is they're overrun essentially by migrants. And these migrants are, some could argue, playing out some of Cleon's paintings. And I can't help but wonder, I look at that and I'm like, was that like, did they jack into this energy field? Did they manifest that? Is that a gigantic ritual? And on that topic, I often look at the logistics of like a ceremony or a ritual where you have to sacrifice a creature, right? So, or a baby or a person, whatever, you're doing a satanic ritual. And it's like the elements that seem to be important. There's geometry. The geometry is important. There is some sort of a spoken word. And so there's like a vibrational frequency aspect to it, right? Because that's what speaking is. It's harmonics, it's frequency. And then there is the spilling of blood. And I think the spilling of blood is interesting because you have a liquid that is a conductor.
Very much like water.
Exactly. So you have this conductor.
Plasma. It's 55% plasma.
So maybe even more effective of a conductor, right? Not only that, but what energy is it conducting? Well, it's trauma, it's fear, it's anxiety, it's sadness, it's hatred. That's the energy when you kill somebody and you sacrifice them, that's being around. So you have this geometry that's trapping in this energy. You have this liquid that's conducting that energy. And then you're coupling it with like this harmonics and frequency aspect. And to me, all of that speaks to just the building blocks of the universe. It's all made up of energy, harmonics, frequencies. Everything is that. And so maybe there is a real way that science one day could begin to understand what these ceremonies, what these rituals are actually doing.
It's a chaotic supercomputer. That's what we're living as, a plasma of chaotic supercomputer. It's unpredictable. You can't measure it. And it's interesting because I think, you can even look at women as plasma portals in a way, right? Their amniotic sacs are, mostly plasma. So there's a lot of...
I look at women as holes, but that's a whole nother thing. It's a different discussion.
Portals, yeah. Please use the portals.
So, I think, that's, again, I hope it's not too confusing for people. The idea of what I'm saying, these Earth-Sun interactions, if you believe that the Earth is round, I guess. I don't even know if that has to be the case. I think it could be the case even on a flat Earth or a donut Earth or whatever the case is. So I think that these interactions are certainly what creates life. I mean, this stuff, the plasma science is just now being started to be re-examined and studied, because most of the good plasma scientists, which is a small select few of them, are of course working for the government. And so everything they do is like hidden and you can't talk about it. You can't. So what's interesting, man, is that it's so weird that we ended it. And I'm not saying we should end it here, but I'm saying that the last time we talked, we ended it by saying like, it's crazy to think that we're kind of like the preachers or the modern day ministers, if you will, talking about some of the stuff that you never heard about in the Bible. I mean, at church.
Right.
And, I failed physics in high school. I ended up taking 2 biology classes just to graduate, but I failed physics. And now I've got I'm super interested in it because I feel like it's the answers to all the questions of our reality. And it's weird that we are the modern day philosophers and physicists and, teachers and preachers and ministers. And you look at guys like Graham Hancock, who he's an archaeologist, but he's a journalist who's also more of an archaeologist than Flint Dibble or whatever the fuck his name was that was on Rogan. And then you got, influencers like that kid Ryan from Ryan's World, making $700 million or whatever the hell he's making. He's blowing out these TV executives who claim to have known everything, and so we've kind of taken on this world. We are definitely in an awakening right now because of all of it. We're like, fuck all these authorities. We don't need TV execs. We don't need music executives. We don't need to learn from teachers and preachers all the time. We don't need to. We can go learn this shit on our own. We can figure it out on our own. And so I think it's an interesting place that we're at, to where we've taken back the authority from all of these fucking evil people who are running the world, who are clearly worshiping these. That's where the term fallen angels come from, in my mind, is they're in the void. They're the 99%. If there's an offshoot, we shoot off light, and they're the fallen ones. They're the ones that fall into the void. So we're the light beings that exist. So again, they're the ones, these people are worshiping these dark ones, and they're getting stuff in the form of technology and information and all this other stuff. But I don't think they exist in a world, where there's a planet full of aliens. I think that they exist as just an intelligence, as a artificial intelligence that is just manifesting and trying to get into this reality, trying to come into this world, but they can't manifest into matter, into material like we can. So
I heard this idea that we should have been in a different place in the timeline, technologically speaking. And somebody in the chat said only moments ago, I don't know if I could find it, but it was this idea that didn't Nikola Tesla have running water as the power source for his pylons? Here we go. It says def not hiding platinum locks. The Tesla tower used water to charge it. And I think what's interesting about that is this, anecdotally speaking, of course, because I'm not so familiar with Tesla's work, but I have come across these notions where, like, no, Tesla was really onto this. There's even stories about him standing in the middle of his pylons and saying that he could see the past, present, and future all from where he was sitting in the middle of these things. The idea is that we deviated in some way when we allowed Einstein to become the intellect that was championed, and we sort of snubbed Tesla. And I've heard that people claim that there was an actual effort to do that. Somebody messing with the timeline. If you believe that, then there's that for you. But either way, it almost does feel like if we went with Tesla, we would have been more advanced, and our knowledge of the realm that we inhabit would have been, exponentially more so than it is now. And instead we had this reductive guy in the form of Einstein telling us, what matter is. And I've even heard stuff about that. It's like the formula E equals MC squared is flawed because it inherently does not include consciousness. And consciousness needs to be included in that formula. But now I do feel like a lot of Tesla's work is starting to come to the surface. And I mean, I don't know if it was snubbed. You hear those ideas of John Trump from MIT going there and kind of gathering up his inventions and then reporting to the FBI that there was really nothing of consequence to be seen or talked about there. So I don't know if maybe that is the snubbing that happened, but it feels like I agree with that. My gut says that that's real. Like, if we didn't step with this dude who married his cousin and we stuck with Tesla, we probably would have been in a better place. And it does seem that Tesla had his finger on this idea of plasma and such.
Well, you mentioned earlier the disclosure. I never watch any of that shit ever. Matter of fact, I was doing Cult of Conspiracy when all that shit was going on at night, and I was like, I don't care about it, because if they don't say the words plasma or plasmoids or anything like that, it's shit that Randall Carlson's talking about, the shit that Dave Zed's talking about, that I'm talking about, then and there's a great book for those who want to follow up on a lot of the stuff I'm talking about, and you can get a lot of real scientific documents and papers to back this stuff up. Is a book called A New Science of Heaven by Robert Temple, and he kind of summarizes all of this, and he kind of set the stage for me learning more about this stuff, because again, I'm a fucking dum-dum and trying to relearn physics and shit like that. I'm like, what is an ion? What is a proton? What is an electron? I'm trying to relearn all this shit, but he put it in a book that helped kind of guide me through this. I think he stopped short of plasma portals and all this stuff, but I think he comes from an academic point of view, and so he's trying to keep his, his academic funding and all this other shit. So he stopped short of saying any of the stuff I'm talking about now. I'm just saying it in a public forum, basically. And so, he talks about lightning balls in that book. He talks about all these different things. So again, it makes a lot of sense when you think about all of the, why would they even hide the fact that plasma is the fourth state of matter from us? That doesn't even make any sense. Why would they hide Nikola Tesla's idea of free energy? Well, I mean,
let me ask you this: is it because if you hide plasma from us and the nature of it, if we started exploring that, we would find precedent for these various entities being made of it, and that it all of a sudden backs this biblical narrative of there are demons, there are angels. Plasma is the medium by which they interact with this realm.
Yeah, and they can create them if that's the case. It's as easy as just. I was talking about the guy Winston Bostic shooting a plasma gun through these magnetic fields. That's what he was doing, was essentially creating these alien life forms that are just floating around, these complex supercomputers that are just floating around trying to form into something. And so it would essentially make sense that they hide all this stuff from us. But I think that they're working with these things. I think they're probably creating them. I think they're probably working with them, like I said, in terms of Freudian, quid pro quo, getting something in return for a Faustian bargain was where I was looking for. Right. Getting something from them and just letting them take whatever they need, take reproductive organs, exsanguinate cows and all this other shit.
And that's the idea. It's like, if we can keep the public from even knowing that these things exist, how can you even begin to speculate that they're working with them if you first have an uphill battle proving that they're real?
Yeah.
Have you guys ever thought about the idea of so obviously something happened, because this is not what we're talking about, the reality of these things kind of like manifesting in our realm. They're trying desperately to get back, but before they were here. Like even we've done some episodes which will be released. Actually, by the time you see this episode, Demon Races will be released. But we've talked about, during the time of Jesus, there are dog-faced people. There's a lot of strange things going. Even the Book of Leviticus is what we were discussing before, and Merkel's most recent episode where they're talking about cynocephaly. These Nephilim type creatures walked the earth. These giants, these strange satyr looking things, they were out there. They were spoken about. They were being worshipped. They were having sex with people. Something happened that they are not here now. And in our discovery, in our haste to bring them back, or to bring this technology back, perhaps the people before us kind of stifled it. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, is this a black hat or white hat operation? Why is this technology gone? Why is the AI frantically working to have us build it? Like they can't do it themselves here. And it's not that they can't do it physically. It's like they have to do it. Like we have to do it. Again, it's consent. We have to open up the
consent. Yeah, we got to build the apparatus. Let me ask you this, Top. Did I tell you about this? My son was watching a Ninja Turtles movie, and the entire premise is like, I think it might have been like Donatello. He's working on a technology he's been in contact with something in another realm, and this thing is telling him how to build this technology that will allow them to come over here. And so, long story short, they get it done. They open up a giant portal, and what comes through it is like, by definition, this is what it was like an ancient creature that was the adversary of mankind that was finally allowed back in because he
every time I do that, every time I open a portal, an ancient creature that's the adversary of mankind comes through.
That's what happens. And I just go, man, that's another one like in this goofy little Ninja Turtles movie, right on its face, right there for you. They're showing you.
Right above my house, with the house that I grew up in,
there's a portal.
I think there's something for sure. So I talked about this on Tinfoil Hat as well. I found a video online about this guy who lived at the head. I used to live down a dirt road. They since have paved it, but this guy that lived at the head of the dirt road used to film these UFOs over basically where my mom and dad live, or where my mom lives now, where my grandma and granddad used to live, basically the land that we grew up on. And I saw this video and I was like, whoa, this is in my hometown. I asked around about it. I called my dad. This was when my dad was alive. I called my dad about it. He said, yeah, that is a fella that's front of the road who has been filming these things. And I said, oh, really? Where's he filming them at? He said, right here. I was like, right here? Like, oh, right above the house? Like, that's fucking crazy.
Whoa.
And so the guy who was filming them, that basically they're orbs, and they look just like they're coming off of a mothership, basically, and they're just flying around through the forest. They're always doing something, right? They're always trying to figure something out. They're always taking samples of us. They're always taking samples of the ground, all this other shit. I'm assuming they're taking samples of the ground. They're flying through the forest, taking samples of something. But this guy essentially said that he would sit there and he watched them like clockwork every night. And every night the military would come chase them off. And so there's a guy here in my hometown now, the town I live in now, who messages me. He heard me on Tinfoil Hat, and he messaged. We became friends. His name is Ryan, and we've been messaging back and forth. And he has these crazy donut-shaped portals that come over his house, basically. And every time he's a farmer, and so every time he sees these things come out, like military helicopters and shit come in. So it seems like they're chasing these things off in some way. Like there's an aspect of the military or the government who's chasing these things off, and then there's an aspect that's like working with them almost. So I think that's an interesting tie-in to it. The fact that, and I know about that. You know, there was a osprey, a marine osprey, flying around above my house over and over for like 2 hours, and I messaged him, and he said, "Dude, I just had this weird sparkly donut thing form in my yard." And so that goes to the idea of plasma portals. And if these things are coming through, then clearly we have something that can disperse them in some way, maybe some kind of a light gun or something like that can, because clearly something's coming in and chasing them off and shooting them or something. Well, and these things are, it's interesting, man.
I've heard that we have used vacuum tube radars to shoot them down in the past, which is interesting because you're talking about like shooting plasma, and I don't know anything because I'm stupid, but something about me says like there's like parallel there.
There's a parallel for sure.
And then of course, to bring him up again, yes, somebody said Cliff High is the new Jerry Marcinski. For me, he is. He talked about how,
damn it, we're gonna have to, I mean, let's wait a little while on the bingo cards, because I actually had people saying that they want to buy some bingo cards.
The problem is if we do bingo cards, like let's say we make it a drinking game, and if you get a bingo, you got to drink. Like we're gonna turn the whole audience into alcoholics. Because I just say the same shit over and over again. But he's saying that basically December 3rd, there's going to be a UFO battle that is going to be very public and visible. And he says that it's going to take part with 3 parties. One of them is a human element, and the other 2 are both UFO elements, but in opposition to one another. And so that 3-way dynamic is going to cause a lot of chaos. And it kind of makes me wonder, a lot of people say that there was, I don't know if it was like an Eisenhower thing, whoever the hell made a treaty with these entities, and that entity, Truman, thank you. And that supposedly expired relatively recently, which is all of a sudden where we see this uptick in UFO sightings. And, the idea was they were supposed to remain in the shadows. They were going to gain access to a certain amount of humans and things like that in exchange for technology, going back to your point about the Faustian bargain. And now we're watching something that's a lot less contained, and there's a lot less of a power structure, a lot less of a deal struck between these things. And so they're kind of just free agents, more or less. But that brings me to kind of where I'd like to end this, and I want to ask you something. It doesn't matter how long this conversation goes, by the way. I'm not saying you have to wrap it up, but we just saw the second congressional hearing regarding UFOs. I don't give a shit. I'm calling it UFOs. I'm not calling it UAPs anymore. We saw the second ever congressional hearing about these things. And to your point, there wasn't like a whole lot of talk about plasma or anything. But what I will say is they're pretty liberal with the idea that these things come from another dimension. And I wouldn't have predicted that. I would have imagined they probably would have stuck more to like a nuts and bolts from another planet kind of a deal. Our elevated space brethren from a technologically advanced civilization far away come to intervene on our behalf and save us. Where do you think this is going, specifically when it comes to what narrative are they going to spin, in your opinion? I'm not asking you to be a psychic, but like we're all kind of watching this story unfold, and I'm watching to see where the deception is. Where do you think they're going to bring this narrative as to what these things are? Because it does seem like we're on the cusp of them bringing it somewhere.
Well, I think there's probably going to be this aspect of we're the saviors, but really nobody's coming to save us. Our collective consciousness has to collectively come together. And in my opinion, the second coming of Christ is the collective consciousness rising. It's the light of God shining from all of us. And we're realizing our true powers of being, these illuminated light beings, almost angelic in a way. I'm not saying we are angels. I'm not saying we're God necessarily. I'm saying that I think we're God experiencing himself. And I think that collective consciousness, whenever it rises, will be what destroys these things. When we come together in prayer, if you think about it, man, every time somebody starts to talk about love and unity and all this stuff that binds the collective consciousness together, they get offed. You got, John Lennon and John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. and guys like even Jimi Hendrix with not necessarily the love talk, huh?
Bob Marley.
Yeah, Bob Marley. I mean, think about the messages that they were trying to, even Tupac. Think about the messages that they were trying to convey in a lot of their music was always like, well, you just mentioned Bob Marley. None but ourselves can free our minds, that kind of stuff. Like, you have to like, the only freedom you're ever going to get is within, when you find God, when you find Christ within. You're never going to get freedom from a government. No government's ever going to come help. The only true answer, the only true way to fight back is through prayer, unity, love, taking care of each other, stuff like that. And they have purposely driven us apart. And if you think about 2020, that's what the fuck they did in 2020, right? They kept us apart because our toroidal fields, when these things come together, we just keep clank, clank, clank. We keep, linking together. We form this giant light that just fucking disperses all this shit in an instance. So I think that, in my opinion, the government will try to pretend like they're the saviors. I think that there is something happening where there's a veil thinning or something, or these things are going to try to make a move to take over this world. If that sounds fucking crazy even saying this shit, dude. But then collectively, our collective consciousness will rise up and eventually we'll move into a new age. I think Cat Williams called it a scab. We're kind of picking off that scab right now, and we're going to enter a new era, of a new golden era. That's kind of how I see it. I'm hopeful, but truthfully though, my intuition tells me that I don't know. Usually my intuition is pretty good. I can go, oh fuck, they're going to steal the election from us in 2020, or they're going to do whatever. And my intuition has been right. But now I'm kind of like, I don't know. Like, I just feel like it's up to us at this point, the free will of the American people, or not just American people, the people of the world, and collectively coming together. But I feel like it's a slow process. And I don't think that everybody can be woken up or awake at one time. I think it might cause some sort of a mass cataclysm or something like that. Because like I said last time on your show, if you wake somebody up in the middle of a sleep, they just go, oh, and they kind of panic, and then chaos ensues from that. You just think about the negative effects that has on your body when someone tries to wake you up when you're late for work or whatever the case is. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know where it's going, but I know that it's all fucking show. I know they're never going to tell us about any of the stuff that I'm talking about. I'm sure there's all kind of interesting studies on plasma science and all this shit that I don't know about. But just from the stuff I've read, this seems like the answers for a lot of things. So
that's what's interesting about the Cliff High's work. Him predicting this sci-fi world, which he thinks is going to be, I mean, he's looking forward to. I'm sort of looking, it's going to be cool, but when and if that predictive marker happens, and there's a turning, he calls it, the fourth turning. I always refer to that more in the political sense, a fourth turning, but he's calling it a fourth turning, like technologically. And when that happens, that's going to be a dam that breaks. And all this information that we're talking about will be actually out in the open and probably usable. So I don't know how that shapes what we do and our reality. And I also don't know where that puts us in the time frame for like the Book of Revelation, and if that's even in our lifetime, or like if this is just another cycle where things get real close and then it'll kind of restart again and things deteriorate to a point where then Jesus has to come back. Like, can this be pulled back, or are we at the end here?
I think a lot of people in a lot of different spaces, whether it's political or conspiratorial, spiritual things of that nature. A lot of people feel like we're at the precipice of something pretty big happening, and nobody quite has their finger on it. Maybe some are closer than others, but we all are kind of unified in that feeling right now. We're at the cusp of a moment. And I just want to say that you spoke earlier about, more or less who the media is now, who the philosophers are now, who the intellectuals are now, who the people who are spreading truth are and trying to wake people up. And I just want to say that if that really is us, people are fucked.
Yeah.
So
Guys, we're in a lot of trouble,
sure.
guys.
Yeah, I
guys
got
are in
a
a lot of
fucking
trouble.
backwards hat on right now, so like
I'm
take your
wearing
fucking
yellow
advice.
sunglasses in my house. Yeah, man, you people are screwed. But I think this was a great conversation, and there's a lot of really interesting stuff there. I gotta, if you could, Brad, there was some names that I meant to write down of people that you were talking about. If you could send me those in a message, like off air at some point, that would be great, because I'd like to research a few of these people that you mentioned. But
Yeah, I'm gonna run this through and like get bullet points and all this stuff. Have this written down and like show notes where we can refer. This will be one of the episodes that we will refer back to, and kind of pull a lot of strings from, or these what did you call them, the tendrils of this. You need to get behind you. The filaments, yeah. You got to get rid of that. I keep the baseball card, but you got to put one of those little plasma things there. Maybe get an engraved, the awakened. Yeah, that would be dope. That's your thing.
Brad, thank you, brother, for your time. One more time for the audience. Where can everybody find your work?
Yeah, thank you guys for having me as well, and thank you for pulling me up on Bohemian Grove that night too. That was pretty cool, man. I wasn't really expecting to go up on stage, but I'm happy you guys pulled me up. And
I actually forgot to say that. Thank you so much for coming out there. I can't explain to you how mortified I was when I found out you were leaving after the first night on a 6-hour drive. I know, dude, I didn't
next
make
time
you do that, but I felt terrible.
Stay over at my house next time.
Yes.
Like don't go back
Come hang.
home.
We could do an IRL podcast. We'll go back to Tops. We'll run a podcast back. And the good news, Brad, is we're doing the next Bohemian Grove in like 5 months. So
awesome, dude. Yeah, I'll try to be there for that one as well. I've been at
by
both.
the way,
I think
this is actually,
I might be the only one who's been here, who's been there twice.
Yeah. I think we're gonna work on getting Tripoli back at the next one, but you've been at both of them so far, so now you're screwed. Now you've made a habit of it. You've got to be at every single one. And please, for the love of God, let us know you're coming, and that way we can organize some stuff, because you've got great information. Your show is tremendous, the Awaken Podcast. We'd love to have you on stage and do maybe a podcast together or something at Bohemian Grove. That could be very cool. So one more time, where can everybody find you, Brad?
Yeah, first, again, thank you guys for having me on. I really appreciate that. Also, guys, I'm not a fucking physicist at all. I'm just reading this shit and trying to regurgitate it. I've studied this stuff for a few weeks now, and I really have come to a better understanding and better place of it. So don't shoot the messenger here. I'm just trying to get some information out to you guys. But yeah, if you want to find me, you can find me at theawakenpodcast.com. That's basically everything that you want to find. All my links to all the different podcast platforms, Rumbles, YouTube, all the other. I got my Patreon link at the bottom, that kind of stuff. I'm gonna try to start building up a more of a presence on the video platforms and Patreon as well. You might even hear a few ads here and there. I'm sorry about that. We got to make money somehow. So I apologize.
Be sorry. You got it. It's a labor. You got bangers up there, though. I'm seeing Heidi, Paul Stobbs. I see Joel. I see everybody. All the homies. You're talking to all of my favorite people. Check that out. There you go. Bang.
Wow. But if you guys would mind if I mention two more things real quick?
Please.
Go ahead.
All right. So a friend of mine has a company called True Victory, truevictory.com. He's a veteran who sells a lot of military-centric apparel and stuff like that. He's kind of like Under Armour. Got a bunch of really cool shirts, man. Really cool gear. Please check him out. And also, thank you for pulling that up. I'm sure he's going to love that, man. And also, please check out. There's a documentary about military or veteran suicide awareness called Tribal, and you can find it on all the platforms except for Netflix. It's a documentary that a few friends of mine made, and they're trying to get funding for another documentary to talk about similar subjects. So if you guys if you don't mind, please check out Tribal documentary. It's definitely not this one.
It's not this. These guys.
Not take place in North Central Island.
No, you can go to
guys
Amazon Prime. Yeah, Amazon Prime Video, and you'll find it's just called Tribal, and it's got a soldier holding some dog tags on there. But yeah, help those guys out, man. Help them get their next movie funded. I know they'd appreciate that. And I know they'll appreciate the shout out too. So, and thank you guys again.
Start supporting people that are not, why are we giving Netflix our money? Why are we giving Amazon Prime our money? Why are we giving, start working directly, supporting people.
I canceled Netflix and my wife just went ahead and I was like, you're watching that? I just canceled this. Like when they donated a whole bunch of money to Kamala Harris is basically a FU to everybody. And I'm just like, you know what?
Done.
I'm like, I just canceled it. And I go in the room and she's watching Netflix. I was like, you know what?
It's unbelievable. It's like
choose your battles.
Yeah, it just keeps popping back up. I've done the same thing, and then they reeled me back in with something. I forgot what it was. It wasn't the Jake Paul fight, but there's something that reeled me back in.
Stranger Things always brings me in, dude.
We're so quick to give our money to Hulu and Netflix and all these different things. Give your money to people that are actually telling the truth, actually trying to provide something of value, do something right in the world. And if you enjoy them, you should be supporting them. So go and support those guys, and go and support Brad at the Awaken Podcast.
Yeah, guys. I think we have an NDS Chronicles later this week, and more so, guys. Again, more plugs. This whole last thing is plug. If you, where's my thing at, dude? If you like NDS Chronicles, if you have a story, scan that QR code and email us, or reach out to us. We have an email. Our email in the description. It should be in the description. Reach out to us with your story, and maybe we'll read it on air. We'll dissect it, talk about it, make fun of you a little bit. No, we won't make fun of you. But yeah, reach out. It's going to be fun. And happy Thanksgiving to everyone that's here and listening.
And guys.
Yeah, guys, we'll see you soon. Peace out.
All right, peace out.
The greatest hypnotist on planet Earth is a oblong box in the corner of the room. It is constantly telling us what to believe is real.
If you can persuade people that what they see with their eyes is what there is to see, you got them. Because they'll laugh in the face of an explanation that portrays the bigger picture of what's happening. And they have.